welcome. My name is Jordan, and this is Kindred Spell. And today we're going to be talking about Reddit stories involving miracles and near-death experiences, because to me, near-death experiences are miracles. I know that might not be the same take everyone has, but to have something like that happen and come back from it is something that I've always been interested in learning about and discussing, so we're reading the stories. So the first one is, a few weeks ago I had a severe allergic reaction to what is still unknown. I broke out in hives as I walked to go to the bathroom. I lost consciousness and hit my head. I heard what was going on, but it was faint. Then I remember a blue light all around me, so bright, so calm, so peaceful and quiet. Then I heard my name very loudly and someone clapping their hands. It was a paramedic telling me to keep my eyes open. I suffer from BPD, and my head is always racing with intrusive thoughts. While immersed in that light, it was the first time my head was quiet and calm. I kept thinking of that peace, hoping to experience it again. I'm not religious, but spiritual. This experience reassured me pain ends and death isn't an end. Glad that experience was able to reassure the commenter. I don't know if it was an NDE, but I had what was, at the very least, a vivid dream of heaven. In the experience, I came out of blackness and was floating in space towards this mansion, like a castle of some sorts. When I was in it, I could see Earth and the stars, and the castle itself was see-through, but I was on the floor, standing there. It was extremely peaceful. I saw tall figures that I assumed were angels, very tall beings that were bright. Then I saw who I believed to be Jesus. He was extremely bright, like you couldn't look upon him, but at the same time you could, if that made sense. I saw his hands, and they had the holes in them from when they crucified him. He was dressed in the purest form of white garments I'd ever seen. He was standing looking at me with his arms open. I went and hugged him, and it was the most loving peace I have ever experienced. It was indescribable what it felt like. And then I remembered being sucked out of that place and back into blackness, which was back into my sleep, because then I remembered that my mom woke me up for school. I was a teenager when this happened, and I've never had another dream that felt real like that. This experience to me didn't feel like a dream. It felt real, more real than anything I've ever experienced or anything in the earth. To this day, I wonder if I had died that day in my sleep and went to heaven, and then got pulled back just in time for my mom to wake me up. Another one. I was in an abusive relationship a couple years ago. My ex tried killing me via strangulation. Oh, fuck. I was about to pass out and my memory started showing up. A bit hard to describe, but it's like I watched my life happen backwards, all up until birth, like a very quick flash. After those memories, everything became white, bright, and my ears started ringing. In the middle of all that, my daughter was 2 at the time, and she'd sadly watched everything. Oh no, the thought of leaving her too soon and missing out on her life shattered me, and I told myself that my life had just begun. I was 22 in college and full of life, so I tried holding on for a bit longer, but I knew I was done. I knew I was leaving everyone that night. I was angry that my life was being taken when I finally just started walking on my own without the guidance of my parents. With my last and only hope, I asked God to help me. My cousin was my neighbor, and he is a big guy. Anyways, his wife heard all the ruckus and got worried for me and told my cousin to go check on me. My cousin opened the door to my apartment, and my ex let go of my neck instantly. If my cousin came 3 seconds later than he did, I was gone. I'm thankful for my cousin to this day. Also, another NDE. I had some issues with my intestines, and I was in so much pain, so much that I kept passing out. My mom rushed me to the health center. While being assessed, my vision started becoming bright, sort of, and I was looking at myself. I was floating out of my body and just watching everyone panic, but still being able to talk. I felt a tap on my shoulder, and I looked over. It was my uncle who had passed just 5 months prior. He loved me so deeply and called me his baby. He said, "Hi, baby." I was so happy to see him, and I said hi back. Then he tells me, "I'm here to come get you." I told my mom what I was seeing. She started yelling and screaming, telling my uncle to go away, and that it's not my time yet. He stayed by my side until the nurse figured out what was wrong with me. He said his goodbyes and told me that he would come back one day when it's my time. I was either 3 or 4 years old and hadn't learned to swim yet. My aunt left me on the stairs, and I saw all the other kids having fun and thought it looked like fun. I went forward, flailed around, sunk like a rock. I took a big breath of water. I didn't have thoughts, but I felt incredibly sad that I messed up. I was pulled out and given CPR by the lifeguard, and when I came to, I was instantly crying and saying how sorry I was. Oh my gosh. When I was 19, I was run over by a truck going 45 to 50 miles per hour in a crosswalk. I didn't see it coming. I had my back to the truck while skateboarding crossing the crosswalk. I felt the truck impact my entire back. My head whipped backwards and slammed the hood. I was then launched 15 to 20 feet forward. While I was in the air, I was still conscious. The only thoughts that ran in my head was, what the fuck just happened? I then felt impact to my face/head, and that's when I blacked out. I then had a seizure on the pavement, bashing my front teeth into the pavement. While it's happening, I'm fully conscious and thinking in my head, what the fuck are you doing? Stop biting the fucking ground, you asshole. Could not control anything physically, and that really pissed me off. I ended up being on the news that morning. When being brought in by the EMT to the ER, nurses kept telling me, "We all thought you'd be dead. No way you're conscious and conversing so well." They ran me through every test, x-ray, CAT scan, MRI. There wasn't any internal bleeding and not a single broken bone. Oh my gosh. I literally walked out of the hospital, skateboard in hand, called my buddies for a ride, and then told them the story. Oh my gosh. To have all that happen and literally walk out of the hospital is absolutely insane. There's one that I want to find, but I don't know. I fell 20 feet off an obstacle course and landed on my butt. My spine compressed. Part of my spine exploded and left me paralyzed. Part of it got shoved up into my skull. I woke up thinking I had gotten too drunk and pissed myself, but really I had brain damage. I asked the paramedic to call my boss because I thought I was going to be late for work, because I had one hell of a hangover. Had no idea I wouldn't be working for another year. Oh my gosh. I'm a 2-year sober drug addict. One night bored and alone at a bar, random Tuesday night, there was like 3 people out. I decided to buy some heroin for fun. My plan was to pay my tab and leave, do the drugs alone in my room. But as I'm at the bar to pay, 3 girls walk in that are all wearing white dresses. I don't remember what they looked like, only that I wanted to talk to them. So I went to the bathroom instead to do my drugs. I overdosed, chest compressions, and 4 Narcan doses later, I woke up in the hospital. While dead, I remember this feeling of, now isn't the time, and fighting harder than I've ever fought, before I shot back into reality and threw up everywhere. My skin was apparently completely purple, and I showed no signs of life. I was very, very nearly dead. The men that noticed me in the bathroom and dragged me out were Marines from out of town. I'm also a Marine. If I went home, I would have died. No one would have checked on me for days. I have many other stories, and as I write this one, it's hitting me again how close I've been to death and how God has allowed me to live. The events in my life have gone in the only way possible for me to survive and for me to grow and see that it was a higher power working in my life. I don't know about people watching, but I know that for me, this kind of thing brings me comfort, at least, because there's moments in my own life where I have doubted things. And when you look back at it, you're just kind of like, oh, none of this is a coincidence. It, like, everything leads to another thing, and everything means something. Granted, for some people, it doesn't have to mean anything. But for other people, finding that meaning brings comfort. So, I'm glad that those 4 Marines were able to pull that guy out and that he found comfort. I'd forgotten about this until I ran across this post. Back in college, maybe 8 or 9 years ago, I worked a normally nighttime shift job where I supervised inventory counts for retail stores that we contracted with. I was oftentimes very tired from school and then having to drive an hour and a half away from where I lived in a big city where I did most of my jobs. On the way to a store with about 20 minutes left in my journey, I started to doze off behind the wheel while driving up a hill in a residential area. When all of a sudden, I was jolted awake with a voice not like my own that said there's someone walking in the middle of the street on top of the hill. I crest the hill, and sure enough, there is a rough-looking man walking down the middle of the street without a care in the world. I was able to slow down and go around him because I was alert. Had I continued to doze off, I would have for sure hit him and hurt him, if not killed him. I don't know, I was going around 35 miles per hour probably. The trajectory of my life would have drastically changed in regards to legal outcomes, though, had I hit him. One of the most medically documented near-death experiences ever recorded is the story of Pam Reynolds. In the early 1990s, Pam, a singer from Georgia, underwent a rare and extreme surgery to remove a massive aneurysm in her brain. To do it, doctors had to stop her heart, drain the blood from her head, and cool her body down to 60 degrees Fahrenheit. She was placed into what is called hypothermic cardiac arrest. During that time, she had no measurable brain activity, no heartbeat, and no blood flow. She was clinically dead by all definitions. Yet during this period, Pam described floating above her body and watching the surgery. She recalled specific medical instruments, like a bone straw that resembled an electric toothbrush. She heard a female voice comment on the size of her arteries. She described events and conversations that were later confirmed by the surgical team, even though she had not been able to hear or see anything. That's the craziest part about near-death experiences, is the recall. Like, because you hear about people being able to, like, if you ever look into this at all, you hear about people able to recall things that they shouldn't be able to recall. Things that happen in completely different rooms than their body, like, than they were in. So, she described events and conversations that were later confirmed by the surgical team, even though she should not have been able to hear or see anything. Her eyes were taped shut, and her ears were fitted with molded speakers that played loud clicking sounds to monitor brainstem activity. The volume was high enough to prevent her from hearing anything else, and her brain was flatlined on the EEG. She also reported seeing a tunnel, deceased loved ones, and a sense of overwhelming peace and love before being pulled back. This is what is known as a verifiable near-death experience. It means the person was clinically dead but came back with accurate information and they could not have obtained through ordinary means. Pam's case remains one of the strongest examples suggesting that consciousness may continue even when the brain is fully shut down. I love when they're verifiable near-death experiences. Obviously unfortunate that the person had to experience it to get said verifiable near-death experience, but the things that they come back with, it's so interesting to learn about, and it gives me so much comfort. Hopefully they are able to find comfort with their experiences. And hopefully with sharing them, that helps as well. It happened at age 15, November 27th or 28th, 2008. It felt as if my body was being crushed subatomical level by an indifferent external universe, that even if I had managed to survive, it would wait for me indefinitely. And there was an impending sense of doom, a primal visceral fear and pain imploding in every cell of my body, and there was no peace. I was in such a survival state that I felt like I would have underwent any treatment in order to survive. Had the doctors offered me a baby, claiming that eating a baby could save me, I unfortunately would have done it. All love and all philosophies dissipated, and there was only the need to survive, and a self-sustained desperation and feeling of suffocation, where every breath was insufficient. My mother tried calming me down, saying it is like sleeping, but in that moment my body was telling me that it has nothing to do with sleep. Sleep is pleasant, and that was not. I described my state with such objectivity as if I were standing in an unfathomable event horizon that is restless and eternal, and dissolves the concept of time in the mind, that I scared her to the point that my pain was irrelevant and she started fearing for herself. When I survived, I felt immense relief, but I knew it was temporary against an unyielding, indifferent universe. It felt as if all other deaths in the world had only been concepts, and my death was absolute. As if everything I ever knew, trees, birds, flowers, were in my mind and being dissolved along with me. The aftermath was incomprehensible and anti-imaginable because it was not a binary. There was no white or black, and my mind was mutually exclusive to that, and thus it felt as if the universe would have a greater probability of going through the tip of the needle than my mind going through the event horizon or death. I explained this to the doctors, but it seemed as if the mind has a natural instinct to look away from this void, to prevent desperation, and they were unable to understand that what I was experiencing was absolute from my perspective and not a statistic in the newspapers or some abstract concept. It was something I was living and trapped within, something that was impossible to escape from. One of the doctors was decent enough to hold my hand. The other was cold and very upfront about my situation, which only exasperated my fear, because the fear was such that I would get scared upon hearing a faint sound, like a fly, the sound of traffic, the sound of water, a pen writing something down, and this fear would lead to more fear because my heart would accelerate, and this made me more scared. And after getting more scared, my heart would accelerate even more, and this made me more scared, which made my heart beat faster. And it was an unending cycle, but it was even worse when I would feel like a hand grasping my heart and feel my heart skip beats. I'm really sorry that whoever was writing this had to experience that. I hope that if this isn't creative writing, that you were able to find a way to cope with that. I was 6 when it happened. I was like a ghost watching CPR and events surrounding my body, even watched a male nurse gowned up for the surgery running out of the OR for help while the doctor was doing CPR. Other nurses beginning to bag me. The CPR is way different than the TV shows, I must say. It caused my whole body to jerk in the weird movement. But weirdly, the body, I say that, for I was completely detached and aware the me is gone from it, was very unnatural in stillness, and the skin was dusty/waxy at the same time. I still remember my lips were blue. They actually did chest compressions on me, and I was still draped up. It wasn't oral surgery, and they didn't remove the drapes for CPR, and rather did compressions on the drapes on my chest. I hovered above the body, watching calmly and almost like watching a science experiment kind of detachment. I knew I was dead, for I did see a person die before that event, and I recognized it from that. Then almost instinctually I looked back at the ceiling behind me. I was immediately transported to that tunnel. It was like a rocky cave. It was dark, but I still can see everything, for was glowing and lit up the tunnel. I didn't feel the floor, for I was standing on air above. I felt so light and floaty, then almost like a humming sense, I walked. At first, nothing but pinpoint of light appeared. It got bigger with each step I took. I arrived at like a wall of liquid white light. It had all the colors you can imagine and more. Nothing I have ever seen before or since can compare. I reached out with one hand and touched the wall. It was solid but liquid. I was pulled through the wall. I found myself in an expansive but beautiful white light. It's like in water, for I can feel my hair floating and my body weightless. Without the pressure of water you'd feel here. So full of love, peace, and the light is tangible and of that love and peace. I remember that I lifted my head to finally dissipate into the beauty. Oh, the being wasn't male or female, as far as they could feel. So bright I cannot see the form, but not blinding, but so soft and kind and loving as that light. No words were used. It's like flashing of emotions / colors. That being said, that it wasn't my time in that method of communication. I understood, but I still begged and explained the fact that I was being mistreated, and I was so weary and in pain, and I wanted to stay. The being stood firm, but so loving about it. Then I felt the light push on my chest. I suspect that's when they shocked me. Immediately fell backwards through the wall of light. Spent a week in a coma. While in the coma, I was supine in the soft velvety blackness, floating like in water. The white light reminds me, if I look at it, of water, and how it moved and had consistency but nothing of that pressure. The death was caused by a combination of respiratory arrest caused by medication reaction with heart murmur / HEDS. Also, my state of mind / body wasn't good from being treated because of cardiac arrest during oral / jaw surgery. I wasn't happy to be back when I woke up from the coma. That's a common thing that is talked about in near-death experiences because of the love that you feel and the peace that you feel experiencing something like that and then having to come back. I couldn't imagine feeling that kind of love and peace and everything that's described a lot of the times in near-death experiences, and then having to come back and live life like you don't know what that feels like, and not being able to, like, obviously there's love here, and we experience love every day, but just the way that it's described, it feels otherworldly and like nothing that we could ever experience here, at least long term, like, because feelings here kind of ebb and flow. 2 autumns ago, I had gone out with a friend. I didn't want to cancel our dinner plans since I had already canceled a few times prior. A series of eerie things happened that day that made me feel like I should stay home. My classmate texted me jokingly, "You should stay home." I've never received a text message like that, but I would love to assume that if I did, guess what? I would stay home. Like, I don't really need a reason to stay home. I'm going to be real honest here. But that would definitely be a reason. Like, they had enough of a feeling, of an intuition to text you about it. Serious. Haha. People love to joke and brush that stuff off, but I just, no. If any one of my friends told me that, I'd be like, I believe you. I'm staying home. My classmate texted me jokingly, "You should stay home," since some weird things happened at the university that day. Before I headed out to meet my friend, I began to sage my apartment and myself. I felt very negative energy surrounding me. I was listening to my favorite podcast that was about paranormal happenings. The host said that the entity that they were going to talk about had caused a lot of people to get into accidents or have strange things happen to them. I, of course, was skeptical and started to listen to it. I started to get a little freaked out, so I paused it, thinking, what if something happens to my pets? Rather be safe than sorry. I started to drive to meet my friend, and then it starts to pour, and I can hardly see the road. I still had a 30-minute drive on the highway. I contemplated turning around and canceling, but a part of me said, no, you can't do that. No, babe. No, you can do that. And you should. You should do that. I get to the restaurant safe. We have our dinner, and I start to head home. I remember driving on the lonely highway, and I looked down at the speed, and it said 107 miles per hour. I didn't even feel like I was going that fast, so I slowed down. Then I remember being on the northern part of town and was going 121 miles per hour. Then I opened my eyes and saw the highway curving, and I freaked out because I had nodded off. I didn't know how I had gotten there. I had forgotten what roads I'd taken. I could only remember snips. For a second, I thought it was a dream. I moved my steering wheel to the right side, and the car started to spin in circles, and I crashed against a barrier. Everything began to move slow. All I could hear was Born to Die by Lana Del Rey playing in the background, but it was so faint I couldn't tell if I was alive, if it was a dream. The thing that snapped me out of the trance was my phone began to play a sound and called the police. I was so freaked out. All I wanted was to get home and drive off. To this day, I still can't remember the whole drive. I've had little snippets come and go. For the first month, I was afraid that I had ran someone over and couldn't remember, since I didn't even know what route I took to get on the main highway. The accident itself was a blur for a few days. Had I been driving faster, I most definitely would have gone over the bridge. Oh, I hope we weren't actually going 121 miles per hour. I hope we weren't actually going that fast. But I'm glad that you were safe and that you didn't go over that barrier. I wrecked a Harley into an oncoming car that turned in front of me, 35 miles per hour to 0 in 1.7 seconds. I didn't see anything, but I remember my voice, but not me, saying, "You're good, you didn't hit your head, everything is okay." I remember feeling like there was a big cushion around my head and neck, fitting snug around me like how a car seat surrounds an infant in a car. I got tossed about 20 feet, ripped the forks clean off my bike, and was standing with my hat on. No helmet. Sorry, Mom. No road rash. Seemingly unhurt before the dude was out of his car. I attempted to escalate the situation even more, and that's when I realized my arm was broken. Right arm and left hand, and not a single cut from the asphalt. I don't know about the afterlife as much, but I do know what it looks like and feels like to have intervention save you. I didn't slam on the ground. There's a video showing me damn near levitating just briefly before impact. I've never once looked back on that day as a terrible event, mostly because the version of me that walked away from it is a completely different version who wrecked. I still don't understand how I walked away. A part of me knows I didn't live, and that timeline expired and collapsed. Oh boy, I'm not religious, and honestly I hate how taboo this all becomes when you try to explain it, but angels walk this earth every day, and I think they're a lot closer to us than we have been told to believe. I was in a car accident with a semi-truck. 100% my fault. On Christmas Eve, I could have ruined Christmas for my entire family. 2 hours away from home. And the whole time I was like, I don't want to leave. Like, I don't want to leave my apartment. I don't want to leave. I don't want to leave my apartment. I don't want to go. But I also didn't want to be on the road on Christmas either. Anyway, pulled out, semi-truck coming this way. So 2 lanes of traffic, 1 lane of traffic going one direction, another lane of traffic going the opposite direction. I did not realize that. I was in a construction zone. There were cones. Pulled out, semi-truck hit me, walked away with bruising and a bump on my head, and my whole car looks, well, it's totaled. Obviously, you don't get into an accident with a semi-truck and have your car not be totaled. I loved that car, but basically, had anyone else been in the car with me, it would not have been good for them. I mean, I wasn't going very fast. I don't know how fast the semi-truck was going, but in the pictures, I'll see if I can put one in here. My car, it basically looks like my car is crushed around the driver's seat. Like they had to saran wrap my car to get it off the highway. So I had bruising and a bump on my head. Thank God. Thank whoever is looking out for me, because that was a crazy time. I remember I was in the hospital and they were like, Jordan, like, don't move, like, just let us do everything for you. And I was like, okay, but like, how can I help you? Like, girl, you have a neck brace on. Sit down. I meant to say that I completely understand what it's like to be like, oh my God, how did I walk away from this? Obviously, him being in a motorcycle is a whole nother level of insane to walk away with just a broken arm, but a broken arm and a hand. I mean, accidents are so scary sometimes. I was born with a deformed artery in my brain called an AVM. On Thanksgiving Day of 2023, it ruptured while off at college. I didn't know it existed. I had a ridiculous headache for probably 30 minutes to an hour. I remember taking Tylenol and it didn't help, obviously. I was completely alone except for my 6-month-old golden retriever, Daisy. Since my roommates had all gone home, I didn't, because one of them had COVID and I didn't want to expose my family. I tried to call my girlfriend at the time and remember trying to explain but slurring my words, so she told me if it hurts that bad, call 911. I hung up and dialed. When they got to my house, every door was locked. They explained to my family that they found me by following Daisy's yelps to my bedroom window, where I was unconscious on the floor, Daisy on my chest. They broke open my window and tried to reach me, but Daisy would not let them leave with me. So they put her leash on and brought us both in the ambulance to the hospital. She never left my side until my emergency brain surgery. She even comforted my devastated family in the waiting room. They had never met before. I had only texted my siblings pictures. After a month-long induced coma, I awoke unable to talk due to the trach I was given a whiteboard and immediately wrote down Daisy after communicating to my family and doctors. The last memories I had, they told me my girlfriend had missed my call that night because she was asleep, so I likely hallucinated our conversation. I was also extremely lucky to be treated by one of the best neurosurgeons in the country. A lot of things just worked out perfectly that night for me to survive and retain enough brain function as I did. I don't really feel deserving of it, so I try my best to share the knowledge I've accumulated over my recovery to other survivors. Oh my God, Daisy! Daisy! What do we do to deserve dogs, bro? They love us so much. They love us so much. They love us so much. And we're so lucky to be loved by them. But that's all I have for you guys today. I will see you guys soon.